You've noticed the pattern. A breakup that happened right before your big presentation. The family crisis that hit during your busiest week. The financial emergency that arrived exactly when you couldn't handle it. Ibn Arabi spent decades studying this pattern and discovered it's not random at all. There was a time in Ibn Arabi's life when he felt like existence itself was conspiring against him. Every time he found stability, something would shake it. Every time he felt secure, a new challenge would emerge. Every time he thought he had figured life out, circumstances would prove him wrong. The timing was what bothered him most. It wasn't just that difficult things happened. It was when they happened. Always at the moment when he felt least equipped to handle them. Always when he was already stretched thin. Always when he needed peace the most. For years, Ibn Arabi interpreted this pattern as evidence that life was cruel, random, or that he was somehow cursed. Then something shifted in his understanding, and he began to see the same pattern from a completely different angle. What he discovered revolutionized not just his own relationship with suffering, but his entire understanding of how growth and transformation actually work. Ibn Arabi realized that what we interpret as terrible timing is actually perfect timing. Not perfect from the perspective of our comfort and convenience, but perfect from the perspective of our development and evolution as human beings. Think about it this way. If you were training someone to become strong, would you give them the heaviest weights when they felt strongest, or when they felt weakest? Most people would say, when they felt strongest, of course. But Ibn Arabi discovered that existence operates by a different logic. Entirely. Life gives you the heaviest weights exactly when you feel weakest, because that's when you're forced to discover strength you didn't know you had. The timing that seems so cruel is actually the only timing that works for the kind of transformation your soul is seeking. Consider the breakup that happens right before your big presentation. On the surface, this seems like terrible timing. You're already nervous about the presentation, and now you have to deal with heartbreak on top of it. But Ibn Arabi would ask, what if this timing is actually perfect? What if the breakup is forcing you to find a deeper source of confidence than your relationship provided? What if having to present while heartbroken is teaching you that your worth isn't dependent on romantic validation? What if this experience is showing you that you're far more resilient than you believed? Without the pressure of both events happening simultaneously, you might never discover these truths about yourself. You might go through life believing that your confidence comes from external sources, that your worth depends on others' approval, that you're fragile and need protection from difficulty. The timing that seems so harsh is actually showing you who you really are, underneath all your fears and dependencies. Ibn Arabi called this the great unveiling. Life strips away your illusions about your limitations by putting you in situations where those limitations prove to be false. This is why the family crisis hits during your busiest week. When you're already overwhelmed, adding another crisis forces you to discover capacities you didn't know you had. You learn that you can handle far more than you believed. You discover reserves of energy, patience, and problem-solving ability that were invisible to you during easier times. Ibn Arabi noticed that people who never face multiple crises simultaneously often remain weak in ways they never recognize. They go through life thinking they're fragile because they've never been tested. They believe they have strict limits because those limits have never been challenged. But the person who has had to handle a family emergency while managing work deadlines, while dealing with financial stress, discovers something extraordinary. They learn that human beings are far more capable than they appear. They realize that what they thought were their breaking points were actually just the beginning of their true capacity. This is the first layer of Ibn Arabi's insight about perfect timing. Difficult experiences come when they do, because that's when you're ready to discover hidden strengths. Not because that's when you feel ready. But there's a deeper layer. Ibn Arabi realized that the timing of our struggles is also connected to the timing of our growth. We don't grow at a steady, predictable pace. We grow in sudden leaps, often triggered by experiences that force us out of our comfort zones. The financial emergency. That hits exactly when you can't afford. It isn't bad timing. It's the exact moment when you're ready to learn something new about money, security, or your relationship with material possessions. Maybe you've been living with unconscious financial habits that were limiting your growth. Maybe you've been avoiding certain opportunities because of fear. Maybe you need to develop a different relationship with risk and uncertainty. Without the pressure of the emergency, you might continue with the same patterns for years or decades. The crisis forces accelerated learning and growth that wouldn't happen any other way. Ibn Arabi studied the lives of people who had achieved genuine wisdom and fulfillment, and he noticed something remarkable. Their periods of greatest growth always corresponded with their periods of greatest difficulty. Not despite the difficulty, but because of it. The people who remained comfortable and unchallenged throughout their lives often remained stagnant as well. They might accumulate possessions, achievements, and experiences, but they didn't develop the depth of character and understanding that comes only through navigating real challenges. This led Ibn Arabi to a revolutionary conclusion. What we call bad timing is actually the timing required for authentic development. Life doesn't give us challenges when we're ready for them in the sense of feeling prepared and confident. Life gives us challenges when we're ready for them in the sense of having developed enough foundation to grow from them. Think about a plant that's been growing in a small pot. Eventually, it becomes root-bound. The plant doesn't feel ready to be transplanted. The process of being uprooted and moved to new soil is stressful and disorienting. But it's also the only way the plant can continue growing. Ibn Arabi realized that human beings work the same way. We get comfortable in our current circumstances, even when those circumstances are limiting our growth. We develop roots in familiar patterns, relationships, and ways of thinking. Eventually, we become bound by these patterns. The crises that seem to come at the worst possible timing are actually life's way of transplanting us when we've outgrown our current containers. The timing feels terrible because we were comfortable where we were. But the timing is perfect because staying where we were would have meant stopping our growth. This is why people often say, years later, that the worst thing that ever happened to them was also the best thing. At the time, the timing seemed cruel. Looking back, they can see that nothing else could have moved them out of situations that were limiting their potential. The job loss that seemed devastating forced them to discover work they actually loved. The health crisis that terrified them led to lifestyle changes that dramatically improved their quality of life. The relationship ending that broke their heart created space for a much healthier partnership. Ibn Arabi discovered that this pattern isn't coincidence. There's an intelligence at work in the timing of our experiences, but it's an intelligence that operates according to our deepest growth needs rather than our surface preferences. This understanding transforms how you relate to difficult timing. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening now?" you begin asking, "What am I ready to learn that I couldn't learn any other way?" Instead of feeling victimized by circumstances, you begin to feel curious about what's trying to emerge in your life. But Ibn Arabi went even further. He realized that the pattern of perfect timing extends beyond individual experiences to the entire arc of a person's life. The sequence of challenges and opportunities that seem random when viewed day by day reveal themselves to be perfectly orchestrated when viewed over longer periods. The betrayal you experienced in your 20s prepared you to recognize genuine loyalty when you found it in your 30s. The failure that devastated you at 30 gave you the humility and wisdom to succeed gracefully at 40. The loss you suffered 5 years ago created the compassion you needed to help someone else through a similar loss today. Ibn Arabi called this the curriculum of existence. Each experience builds on previous ones, creating a progression of learning and development that wouldn't be possible if the timing were different. What seems like random suffering when viewed in isolation reveals itself to be purposeful preparation when viewed as part of a larger pattern. This doesn't mean that all suffering serves a purpose, or that we should passively accept injustice and cruelty. Ibn Arabi was clear about this distinction. There's a difference between the natural challenges that promote growth and the unnecessary suffering caused by human ignorance and cruelty. But much of what we experience as poorly timed difficulties falls into the first category. These are the experiences that stretch us, teach us, and prepare us for the next phase of our development. And their timing, however inconvenient it may seem, is actually essential to their effectiveness. Consider how this understanding changes your relationship with current difficulties. That stress you're feeling about multiple challenges happening at once? What if it's not evidence that life is unfair, but evidence that you're ready for a significant leap in your capabilities? That overwhelming feeling when everything seems to be falling apart simultaneously? What if it's not a sign that you can't handle your life, but a sign that you're about to discover you can handle far more than you ever imagined? Ibn Arabi taught that developing this perspective is one of the most powerful tools for navigating difficult periods. Instead of fighting against the timing of your challenges, you begin working with it. Instead of exhausting yourself by resisting what's happening, you direct that energy toward learning and growing through what's happening. This doesn't mean becoming passive or fatalistic. It means becoming strategic about where you focus your energy. You can't control the timing of what happens to you, but you can control how quickly and completely you learn from what happens to you. Ibn Arabi noticed that people who embraced this perspective moved through difficulties more quickly and emerged from them stronger. They wasted less energy on resentment and resistance and invested more energy in adaptation and growth. They also developed a kind of confidence that's rare in our culture. Instead of confidence based on avoiding difficulty, they developed confidence based on their proven ability to grow through difficulty. This is a much more stable foundation because it doesn't depend on circumstances remaining comfortable. The person who knows they can handle whatever comes has a different relationship with uncertainty than the person who needs everything to go according to plan. They're more willing to take meaningful risks, more resilient in the face of setbacks, and more available for genuine relationships because they're not constantly protecting themselves from potential pain. Ibn Arabi believed that understanding the perfect timing of our struggles is one of the keys to living with genuine fearlessness. Not the foolish fearlessness of someone who thinks bad things won't happen to them, but the mature fearlessness of someone who knows they can grow through whatever does happen to them. This perspective also changes how you relate to other people's timing. When you see someone going through multiple difficulties simultaneously, instead of thinking they're unlucky, you begin to recognize that they might be in a period of intensive growth. Instead of just offering sympathy, you can offer the perspective that there might be hidden gifts in their apparent misfortune, not in a way that minimizes their pain, but in a way that honors their capacity to transform that pain into wisdom and strength. Ibn Arabi spent his later years helping people recognize the perfect timing in their own stories. He would ask them to look back at the most difficult periods of their lives and identify what they learned, how they grew, and what became possible for them afterward that wouldn't have been possible before. Almost invariably, people could see the pattern. The timing that had seemed so cruel had actually been exactly what they needed to become who they were meant to be. The experiences that had felt like punishments had actually been invitations to discover their true capabilities. And once they could see this pattern in their past, they could begin to trust it in their present. Instead of feeling victimized by current difficulties, they could feel curious about what those difficulties were preparing them for. Your pain is not random. Your struggles are not meaningless. The timing that seems so wrong is actually more right than you can currently understand. Ibn Arabi discovered that existence operates according to a wisdom far deeper than our immediate preferences and far more loving than our surface understanding can recognize. The next time multiple difficulties hit you simultaneously, remember Ibn Arabi's insight. You're not being punished. You're being prepared. The timing isn't cruel. It's perfect. And the person you're becoming through this experience is exactly who you're meant to be. If this video resonated with you, like this video and share this with your loved ones. Thanks for watching.